Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to congratulate and thank the Medical Center Chief of Batangas Medical Center, Dr. Mon Magnaye, for supporting the establishment of the section of geriatrics. I'd like to thank the organizers, Dr. Ruel de Guzman and Dr. Eliza Tercelo, and their team for putting up this very first postgraduate course in geriatrics, aptly titled Geriatrics in a Disrupted World. I'd like to say hello to my good friends and co-panelists this afternoon, Dr. Peter Ferry of Malta and Dr. Ed Poblete. The title of my talk is Building Resilience and Healthcare Delivery in Geriatrics in the Philippines. First, let's talk about the vulnerability of older Filipinos to COVID-19. Is this a fact or a fiction? So looking at this slide, you'll see that the demographics of COVID-19 infection in the country showing the higher share of older persons among confirmed infection early on during the pandemic. After the first 100 days, at least 35% of confirmed infection come from those 60 years old and above. It is also clear that there are more males than females who succumb to the COVID-19 infection. This next slide shows the older person's vulnerability to COVID-19, and it's very evident in this slide. 100 days after the infection, after the first infection, 72% of all recorded deaths are in the 60-year-old and over bracket. This reported higher mortality in the elderly is sustained, even up to present, to this very day. With this data, the government recommended that or issued guidelines to prevent senior citizens from going out of their homes without valid reason or essential purpose. This was met by a quiet protest by several senior citizens groups and organizations. They claim that this is a form of organized ageism. They claim that not all elderly are vulnerable. But the healthcare sector, particularly the frontliners, including nurses and doctors, practically beg the vulnerable older persons to stay home and be safe. I guess we felt that the burden will be lessened if they just follow the guidelines. This is a picture of our nurses at St. Luke's Geriatrics Center in their fighting form wearing their PPEs with the tagline, "Please stay home or stay with us." Soon more wards follow suit as incidents of ER admissions grew exponentially. Until the middle of 2020, when the healthcare system could hardly sustain the admission rate, and you will see this familiar sign at the doorstep of most of the Department of Emergency Room in most of the hospitals in Metro Manila. Dr. Ed Poblete, the next speaker, will tell you more about the experience of St. Luke's Medical Center during his talk. So, again, looking back at the demographic representation, shifting age structure of COVID-19 infections were observed from older to younger age group. This slide shows the shifting of age structure of COVID-19 infection from older to younger age group from March to September of 2020. This is during the Delta variant wreaking havoc in the Philippines. We think that one of the reasons why this is so is perhaps the DOH, the Department of Health's lockdown policy for senior citizens order has probably saved a lot of lives. Senior citizens' lives at that. I think more than our senior citizens would admit, the lockdown was successful. I think we owe the Department of Health and the Interagency Task Force some gratitude for doing their job. Prompt response early in the pandemic to save more lives, particularly the vulnerable elderly. Of course, there are unwanted side effects on these lockdowns, like psychosocial problems like isolation, increasing depression, and other health concerns like degenerative diseases. I still think that the Department of Health did the right thing, given the urgent circumstances. So again, kudos to the Department of Health and thank you, IITF. Again, showing to you the age-sex pyramid of COVID-19 individuals with drastic decrease in infection rate among the elderly, shifting the percent share of individual ages 25 to 34 increased from 21% to 30%, while those of the 60 years old above from 65% to even less than 15%. The Philippines can be accused of having a not so sophisticated health system compared to our more developed neighbors and Western countries. But I think arguably we have the best nurses in the region and perhaps the whole world. This, I think, more than made up to the lack of high-tech and sophisticated healthcare system. It is said that resiliency starts with a smile, and we have a lot of that here in the country. So again, I salute our frontliners, the nurses, the aides, and other team members who have contributed so much to sustain the services to all, especially the vulnerable senior citizens. Thank you to our nurses and of course to our doctors as well. Now let's go to long-term care. Let's go specifically to nursing homes. Just to give you a background, in 2011, when we did a survey on the nursing homes, availability of nursing homes, so that we can produce a directory for the Philippines, we only had less than 10 nursing homes, private ones, of course. There are a few existing ones, government-run nursing homes, but hardly you can say that it's a nursing home. Rather, it's a what they call bahay ampunan, no? More for the indigent or those without families to take care of them. So if you go 8 years forward, from 2011 to 2019, there was an astonishing growth, but still unrecognized health sector industry from less than 10 institutions to more than 120 in 2019. I suspect there are more now compared to 2019. Okay, I guess one of the reasons is the sustained growth of the older population. This graph shows the growth rate of senior citizens compared to the young, which shows 3 to 4 times more at around 4.5% to 1.6% of the total population in 2020. The trend is shown to slow down, but the difference between age group will be maintained up to 2045. So I expect the growth in the number of nursing homes to increase further. Looking at the active life expectancy by sex and age as reported by Professor Cruz of the UP Population Institute, this table shows that active life expectancy by sex and age projections showed a remarkable years in our lives that will be spent with some sort of disability across ages and sex. If you take, for example, if you're age 60 years old right now, if you have at least 12 years on the average remaining years, 4 years of that, or 24% of your remaining years, will be spent in poor health or in some form of difficulty with at least one of your basic activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living. And this is also true for females. If you are 60 years old now, you are expecting a 40% remaining years in poor health or with functional difficulty with at least one ADL or IADL. So nursing homes in the Philippines was hit hard by the pandemic. I can tell you that because I am a medical director of two facilities, medium-sized facilities here in the Philippines. As news traveled very fast, that most of deaths early on during the pandemic in the Western world were predominantly coming from institutionalized elderlies. It was reported even as high as 46% contribution to the total number of mortality in the US were coming from those elderlies living in nursing homes. Understandably, a sense of panic were the predominant reaction among the operators of these nursing homes. That's me in the picture wearing my first ever pair of PPEs, which was sent to me by relatives from the US. Unfortunately, the government support was wanting and was non-existing. They are not aware that we even exist. So all the PPEs, food, monetary relief were all directed towards hospitals. I can tell you that nothing in my nearly 30 years clinical and administrative experience prepared me for this catastrophic, unprecedented event. We had to build isolation rooms and quarantine areas where there is none. We needed protocols and in-house policies where there is none. No help from the Department of Health, nor the IATF, because, as I said, they don't know that we even exist. We resorted to establishing our own in-house COVID-19 task force, a working group composed of our doctors, nurses, the head of administration, who met regularly to review recommendations coming from the WHO, CDC, Department of Health, policies among others, and some friends from abroad who are working in an institution, and of course a lot of prayers to help guide us run these nursing homes amidst the pandemic. One of the more common dilemmas or frequent dilemmas that we often encounter when we had an outbreak inside the facility was that those with patients who have signed no to hospitalization in their advance directive forms. Meaning, if ever what happened to their patients in the institution, they don't want them to be hospitalized. Rather, they should be managed in the institution itself. But unfortunately, these patients also stay in the ward where there are more than 5 residents who are vulnerable. You can imagine a patient having fever and a suspect of COVID-19 staying with 8 patients in one room, and eventually you are able to diagnose and confirm that he has COVID-19, but the family refuses to take him out of the ward. And there is a risk of infection of the close contacts inside the ward. These are just some of the challenges that we face on a daily basis. We had to make makeshift quarantine areas for the caregivers who would be symptomatic, turn positive. We have to build hand washing areas as much as possible around the facility. We turn to technology for help, like the CCTVs to monitor residents, especially useful for tracking close contacts or for contact tracing. We also have remote monitoring we used at home for COVID-19 patients. We also used online chat group converted into patient chart where all the members of the team communicate, as our mobility were restricted in clinical areas or patients' rooms. This is to minimize contact and avoid more infections. We were forced to use gadgets like these remote ECGs that can easily be transmitted to your phones. We used the remote stethoscopes as well. We taught our caregivers how to listen to breath sounds, cardiac sounds, how to place the sensors so we can verify their physical findings. At first, it really felt weird, but as you get used to it, it became routine and acceptable for our senses. Some residents who were at risk for falls and were staying alone in their rooms, we had wearable devices that can send off alarm directly to the caregivers or nurse on duty when the patients are out of balance for prompt response and prevent falls. Or if a fall has occurred, then immediate appropriate attention is provided. These are just some of the technologies that we use. The most common technology, of course, is the video chat, which improved agitation in people with dementia. Video chat with relatives were very welcome and has offered significant relief to feeling of isolation, as family visitation rights were suspended and social activities inside the homes were also not allowed. So these video chats or video conferences has helped us a lot. This is a legacy wall. It is a testament to the lockdown policy of some of our institutions, especially in our center, Laverna Center. We issued early on that caregivers should stay in the facility. And some of them stayed on for more than almost 2 years inside the facility. There were 50 to 70 staff who were housed inside the facility, and they have sacrificed a lot. Just like I believe we have the best nurses, I also believe we have the best and most dedicated professional caregivers in the world. So I could not thank them enough, for without them, I cannot imagine how the residents have survived. So this legacy wall serves as a testament to our caregivers' sacrifices and dedications to their job. Lastly, I think one of the more significant thing that happened is that Nursing Home Association of the Philippines was born because of the need for the government to recognize the existence of this emerging industry. We wrote the Department of Health regarding the inclusion of the seniors in nursing homes or custodial care facilities and nursing home frontliners to the vaccination program priority list of the Philippine government. And we had a very good response. And this started the practice of giving vaccines to nursing homes inside their facility. They did not require our residents to go to their vaccination centers because obviously these senior citizens we will have difficulty going to the vaccination place, as well as will be very high risk for infection. This is me with Mayor Marcy of Marikina City, who personally went to our facility and conducted a vaccination program for our elderly residents. So again, thank you very much. Now for the last part of my talk, I will tell you about a study we did on the usefulness or the reaction or the experience of our geriatricians and their patients to telemedicine use. Telemedicine use has been there since 1970s, and these, according to Brignell, are the different uses of these technological advances. It is used in medical consult, for expert opinion remotely for inpatients. It can be utilized for triaging, whether the patient needs hospitalization or just needs home care. For community geriatrics, it's also used for monitoring patients and adherence to their medications. And for nursing home residents as well, monitoring their well-being. And for ambulatory geriatrics or outpatient consult. We did a study entitled Self-Reported Assessment of Telemedicine Among Geriatric Patients and Geriatricians using the Telehealth Usability Questionnaire, or TUQ. It's a pilot study by one of our now consultant Cobillas, Dr. Cobillas, Dr. Ramirez. The pandemic has forced majority of clinicians to try telemedicine. Their experience and assessment of this technology will help improve current platforms and will be vital to tailor fit it not only to the customers or the patients, but also to the providers or the geriatricians. To describe the objectives were to describe the experience of the patients and the geriatricians in using telemedicine as regards to its usefulness, ease of use and learnability, interface quality, interaction quality, reliability and satisfaction, and the possibility of future use or sustainability. The methodology, it's a pilot study, it's a descriptive one, a cross-sectional study, started in January 2021, ended in 2021. It was approved by St. Luke's Research Ethics Committee, Ethics Board. And we invited all PCGM fellows or Philippine College of Geriatric Medicine fellows to participate. And there were 166 invitations were sent. And patients of those who will agreed to participate were also invited, along with their families and caregivers, to be included in the study. In exclusion criteria, we did not invite inpatients, only patients at home. Results showed 86 patients gave consent to participate in the study. 61 out of the 166 geriatricians who were invited agreed to participate. And as far as usability is concerned, patients agreed that it's very useful at 88 to 95%. Geriatricians as well agreed that it's very useful, 90-95%. And the ease of use and learnability, whether it's simple, it's easy to learn, is it productive, 80 to 90% agreed, the same as with those geriatricians. The interface quality, whether it's pleasant, whether it's likable, easy to understand, the patients say yes, 85 to 88% of times. The geriatricians, yes, agreed also. As far as interaction quality, whether they can talk, express themselves, and see what they want to see, 75 to 90% of patients agreed. The geriatricians, however, felt that there is more to be improved, like, for example, in seeing the patients and looking at them in the camera might be the limitation. As far as reliability is concerned, is it same as face-to-face? Can you recover if you make a mistake? Can you fix it easily? Again, we had good response from the patient, but the geriatricians felt that there is lacking. There is something lacking. Okay, it is not the same as face-to-face, of course, with the absence of the formal physical examination. And it seems that if you make a mistake, you cannot recover right away. Yeah? Satisfaction and future use. Is it comfortable? Is it acceptable? Will you use it again? Are you satisfied? Majority of patients said yes, 86 to 89%. I mean, patient and their relatives and their families. The geriatrician says it's 74 to 91%. So there is an agreement on the usefulness of telehealth, telemedicine. I think it will stay with us, but I hope it can be improved. Telemedicine, delivery of healthcare services through information and communication technology, or ICT. It's innovative that solves a lot of barriers for our geriatric patients, like mobility, dependence to companions, the risk of infection, of course, especially during this pandemic. The challenge, of course, is how to introduce this to older patients. Okay, and the challenge of to tailor fit it to individual needs. There is a need for us to continuously assess the present and the post-implementation of this newfound way of doing healthcare. And I think we should look at the value of this health delivery in terms of payment. We have not really discussed this, or there are no at least present guidelines on the value in terms of payment of these services. So I think that's my last slide. I will be happy to entertain questions. Maraming salamat po.